North Carolina is famous for world-class red drum fishing. Nowhere else can you consistently catch trophy-sized red drum that weigh in excess of 40 pounds.
You go get the tape measure real quick too.
In 1984, the all-tackle world record red drum was caught off Hatteras Island, weighing over 94 pounds. In fact, North Carolina waters have produced 10 out of the 16 current world records for these prize fish. Our unique estuarine system has always offered the most ideal conditions for spawning, abundance, and growth potential.
The world record drum was caught in 1984, November the 7th, exactly 11 years from the previous world record. The one in 1984 was 94 pounds, 2 ounces, was caught just south of the northern part of Avon Village, about 4 houses in.
The world-class size and abundance of red drum in our waters led the General Assembly to designate the red drum as our state saltwater fish back in 1971. North Carolina has always been the haven for this great fishery. It has been well documented for over 300 years. John Lawson, an English explorer, departed from Charlestown, modern-day Charleston, South Carolina, on December 28, 1700, to explore the backcountry of the two Carolinas. The expedition lasted 59 days and covered some 550 miles through the forbidding Carolina backcountry. His findings and descriptions based on his exploration were ultimately published in 1709 in his book, A New Voyage to Carolina. Here, John Lawson documents red drum in North Carolina more than 3 centuries ago.
The red drum is a large fish, much bigger than the bluefish. We have greater numbers of these fish than of any other sort. People go down and catch as many barrels full of these as they please with hook and line, especially every young flood when they bite.
But after centuries of plenty, the stock status of red drum in modern times has declined to critically low levels.
I can remember having good catches of them when deer season had already opened by the middle of October. That stayed pretty much throughout the 50s and 60s until along about 72 or 3. And for some reason, the fish just disappeared.
When we have a good year class of drum, we go out and we hammer them. If we have a poor year class of drum, nobody really pursues them.
Whatever's hot, everyone will go out and just nail it. And then the stocks are gone, and then they're like, well, there's nothing left to fish, so we're going to go fish something else. So then the stocks rebound again. It's pretty much a predictable pattern of overfishing.
Increased public demand for red drum as table fare has drawn attention to commercial fishing pressure as a cause for this decline. North Carolina and Mississippi are the only 2 states in the country to have a commercial red drum fishery, with our state landing up to 70% of the nation's total.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Recreational fishing pressure has been a subject of great concern as well. And, in fact, recreational fishermen in North Carolina during the decade of the 90s landed more red drum than commercial fishermen, on average of almost 50,000 pounds each year.
We believe that the red drum FMP is explicit in its mandate.
The declining status of red drum led the Division of Marine Fisheries in 1998 to begin preparing a management strategy to guide the recovery of this important species. In April 2001, the Marine Fisheries Commission approved the Red Drum Fishery Management Plan, charting a course for recovery of North Carolina's official saltwater fish.
The 1997 Fisheries Reform Act required that fishery management plans be developed for all of the state's commercially and economically important species. The Marine Fisheries Commission uses our stock status list to set the priorities for fishery management plan development. And when they looked at the status of red drum, they were very concerned about that, and so in 1998 they began development of the plan for the recovery of red drum. It takes about 2 years to develop a fishery management plan, however, and they felt the stock needed attention right away, so they implemented temporary measures to guide that recovery. Then in 2001, they passed the final fishery management plan, charting the road to recovery for red drum.
As a result of the temporary rulings made during the fishery management plan process and subsequent changes, restrictions placed on the red drum fishery include a commercial fishing year from September 1st through August 31st, with a 7-fish trip limit to ensure red drum is a bycatch fishery only, to prohibit the possession and sale of red drum larger than 27 inches, allowing older fish to spawn and reproduce, and to set recreational harvest limit at 1 fish per day with a slot limit between 18 and 27 inches so as to limit the impact on stocks.
Understand that the rules are for a purpose. Like with red drum, 18-inch minimum size limit. Essentially, we're trying to protect those smaller fish, reduce mortality on those smaller fish. The 27-inch upper slot limit is to protect the adult spawning stock. These fish, they don't mature until they're over 30 inches. So by protecting the older fish, essentially what you've got is money in the bank. That's your spawning stock, they're your producers, you're protecting those fish.
The scientific name for red drum is Cyanops ocellatus. Cyanops is Greek for perch-like marine fish, and ocellatus is Latin for eye-like colored spot, which refers to the black spot on either side of the tail. Scientists believe that the spots may fake predators into attacking the red drum toward the tail section instead of near their eyes, allowing the drum to escape. Red drum derive their name by their color, which ranges from a deep blackish and coppery to nearly silver, and from the characteristic noise that they produce. During spawning, males produce a drum-like sound by vibrating a muscle in their swim bladder.
And you can think about this in terms of an evolutionary adjustment, because most of the members of the drum family live in the estuary, live in the inside coastal waters, where it's very turbid and muddy, and it's very difficult to see sometimes, and it's very difficult to pick up the other members of the group. But if you have a situation where you can sort of call everybody over, then it serves as a real advantage to try and get to optimize the spawning event.
Adult red drum move from offshore in the winter to nearshore waters in early spring. Sexually mature adult red drum spawn in waters around coastal inlets and specific areas of Pamlico Sound from August to October. The fertilized drum eggs are carried throughout the sounds and estuaries by tides and winds and hatch within 24 hours. They will live in shallow grass beds and marshes for the first few months of life.
They'll grow rather rapidly. In the first year, they'll reach 10 to 12 inches in length. They're basically benthic feeders, feeding on the bottom, eating things like fiddler crabs, mud crabs, small shrimp. As they get larger, they'll feed more on fish, but they tend to be primarily feeding on small crabs and things of that nature when they're juveniles.
Red drum will continue to grow rapidly through the first 5 years of their life. There is not much overlap in length in the different year classes of fish. Essentially, you can tell how old that fish is based on its length. But that changes around age 5.
But once that fish reaches age 5, the growth really slows down, and that growth curve kind of flattens out. And so it's really hard to tell the difference based on length of a 5-year-old fish from a 20-year-old fish, because they could be essentially the same length. What you do see is the fish really start to put on some shoulders and some girth, and so they start adding a lot more weight and girth as they get older, but they stop growing in length.
Red drum can live to be 60 years old. So there are red drum out there in the population right now that were spawned in the 40s, in the early 40s, prior to the end of World War II.
This is a fish that lives up to 60 years old. We've aged fish up to age 62. So a lot of times you take that fish out of the water, he's older than you are.
This is an example of an otolith taken out of an adult red drum. It's made out of calcium carbonate. It's located in a fluid-filled sac inside the fish next to the brain, and it serves the purpose of maintaining balance and equilibrium for the fish. It's very heavy. It also is used for sound detection. It also serves a very important role for fishery scientists, and it's been known for quite some time that you can use otoliths for aging.
Magnifying a cross-section of an otolith, determining age becomes a simple matter.
And each one of these lines that you see are a daily growth ring. And that's analogous to a cross-section of a tree stump. In that case, you have annual rings, but in this case, we have daily rings. So this fish is probably 30 or 40 days old.
It has been discovered that the width of the ring is proportional to how fast the fish has grown. During the winter months, slow growth rates can occur, so the rings are closer together. Examining the chemical mix of each ring shows where the fish has come from.
And so what we can do is reconstruct the environment that the fish was experiencing over its entire life by examining the chemical mix, the elemental mix in each one of the rings that are laid down. So that's very useful to try to understand where the fish has been and the environmental factors that the fish were experiencing.
Examining the otolith helps to determine where red drum have been, which is critical for proper stock assessment. It has also been determined that our state experiences 2 separate populations of red drum, ranging from North Carolina and the fish that extend up to Rhode Island, and from South Carolina southward, down to Florida.
And the basis for that split has been about 12 to 14 years of tagging data, where between the states of North Carolina and South Carolina, we have tagged tens of thousands of red drum. And very, very rarely do we ever see a fish tagged in North Carolina go south, and very, very rarely do we ever see a fish from South Carolina move north. So the split seems to be, for whatever reason, right along the North Carolina-South Carolina border.
Your stick
That
up
is
there.
beautiful, Rayford. Pretty fish, man. Just a gorgeous fish. This is such a great catch and release fish because they revive so easily. And have these fish out of the water and they revive so easily. Take one little scale off, and we want this tag. What happens is it goes in on the other side of the bones, going down with the fins. You pull it tight, and it locks right in there. Boom, there he is. We need a length on him.
42.
42 and a half. Just hold him right upright.
The North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries has sponsored a program where over 25,000 red drum were tagged. Most juveniles were recaptured within 10 miles of the release site, and approximately 99% of all drum were recaptured in North Carolina waters.
Excellent. At one point, we went back to the same hole where about a month previously we tagged quite a few red drum, and we recaptured them, literally tag number in sequence.
Adult red drum congregate in Pamlico Sound to spawn. Their movement during this time was once believed to be confined to a very small area, but it has been found that the opposite holds true.
Well, one of the things we wanted to determine is how localized the red drum movements were. And what we found was much more extensive movements than most fishermen thought. So this is the area we're working on. This is coastal North Carolina, and this is a expanded map of the lower Neuse River. This is Adams Creek, South River, Turnagain Bay, and Rattan Bay, which is, encompasses about 15 miles of shoreline. And this is a track that we've determined for a fish over a 30-day period during our field season in 2000. This is the point at which we collected the fish, and then over a 30-day period we noticed that the fish was moving along shore over a range of about 12 kilometers.
Well, Teresa, we ran over here.
Wow! Look at that. That is a flounder.
Of the many goals and objectives of the Red Drum Fisheries Management Plan, one in particular is directed towards commercial fishing practices, which is to reduce directed and bycatch mortality and increase the escapement of juvenile red drum from inshore nursery areas into the adult spawning stock. But information was needed to obtain this goal.
The fishery management plan for red drum had a couple of data gaps that they needed information for. So what we wanted to do was look at the catches of red drum associated with different types of commercial and recreational gill nets that are used in the sort of estuarine and sound areas. So we have a flounder in the flounder net. But so probably the mortality estimates or the mortality information that we can provide the Division of Marine Fisheries with is probably one of the most important parts of this research. What's probably the most important findings that we have so far are that of the fish that the commercial fishers catch in these gill nets, probably 99% of those are within the size range that they're allowed to keep if they are dead. So they're not catching the very small ones or the very large ones. Well, we do catch the odd small fish in these, but the gill net selects by its, the dynamics of the net itself will select fish of a certain size. So there'll be a size range that this flounder net will catch. The big fish will be too big to go through and become gilled, and also the big fish tend to be on the other side of the barrier islands. So some of the very small fish might go straight through. So in this net we catch up to 27 inches. We've only ever had one that I think was a bit bigger than that, but they're mostly between 18 and 27 inches. Now some of the other nets that we have are smaller meshed, so they catch smaller fish. They tend to catch smaller fish. For example, the recreational commercial gill net is much smaller mesh size, so it does tend to catch some of the smaller fish. If you imagine a large fish trying to go through a small mesh, it won't happen.
North Carolina is known around the world for its fantastic sports fishing, so much so that nearly 2 million people fish our coast each year. With this amount of angling pressure, fish stocks can be adversely impacted. Catch and release is commonly practiced, but it does not guarantee the fish's survival. Here's what you can do to increase those chances. Conventional J-hooks have a greater tendency to be swallowed and gut hooking at fish. Circle hooks are designed to almost always set in the fish's mouth and not in the stomach, where most harm can occur. They are engineered so that the point of the hook is more perpendicular to the shank than parallel. The hook rotates in the direction of the point of penetration. The set is accomplished through pressure, not strike force or angler hook set.
Get away from that pilot. Oh gosh, get away. He knew right where that pilot was. Multi-spot. Look at that hook now. Right in the corner of the mouth. Okay, circle hooks, what we're using today is like a 3/0 circle hook. The good thing over a J hook is a circle hook, as you've noticed, we haven't been setting the hook on these fish. We've been putting the bait on, throwing it out there, and when it comes tight, I just start reeling. Because of the way this hook is made right here with that circle, when the fish grabs it, it goes to the corner of his jaw. If you'll notice, every fish we've had has been hooked in the corner of the mouth. It makes for easy release, and it's a good hookup ratio. Okay, what we're going to do now, we've been catching a lot of these redfish, nice sized fish on these circle hooks, and every one of them's hung in the corner of the mouth. One thing, and it's a little, even being hung in the corner of the mouth, which is the hard part of the mouth, it's a little bit harder to remove a hook from there. So what we're going to do, we're going to push this barb down on this circle hook. So just like fly fishing, now we're fishing barbless. So this should make the removal of this hook much easier.
43 inches.
43 inches. He was bigger than we thought he was.
What is it, 30 some odd?
Yeah, he's in the 30s. This guy, she was, I think it's a female, only the male's drum. Away she goes. Most of the guys are using out here fishing the lower Neuse and Pamlico Sound are using a slip rig with about an 18-inch leader. The best hook that we found on that slip rig is a super large 16-aught circle hook with the barb bent down on just an 18 or 20-inch leader. Ideally though, we've come up with something a little bit better. It's called the Owen rig that Owen Lupton developed. And whether you're using a J hook, which used on the 18-inch leader and the slip sinker, you got as much as 50% deep hooking. We really have reduced that deep hooking down by shortening the leader and putting a heavier weight. So as soon as the fish picks it up and starts running, he feels the weight, the hook comes around and catches him in the corner of the mouth before he gets a chance to get it deep.
The Owen rig that was mentioned earlier is an improvement over the more traditional drum rig. It was designed by Owen Lupton, who has fished the Pamlico Sound for over 50 years.
Basically, this rig sort of evolved out of trying to find a rig that would use a circle hook that would minimize, even with a circle hook, the amount of deep hooks that you would have. And so what I did was began to shorten the leader up, the amount of leader that I had been using. And my idea was to use the weight on the hook as a sort of a stop, so that when the fish seemed to come to the weight, they didn't want to swallow that weight any further in their mouth. It seemed to me that they would, when they chomped down on that lead, that would sort of be a stopping point to them.
Well, maybe we do. Yeah, I think we got a drum here.
Research funded by a North Carolina Fishery Resource Grant program was conducted to study the effects of J-hooks and circle hooks. Large spawning red drum were caught using identical rod, reels, line, and baits, the only variable being the hook type. Some drum were caught using circle hooks. Others were caught with J-hooks. Data was recorded on each fish caught, then tagged and transported to a holding pen or pound. 4 separate pounds were stationed in various locations in the Pamlico Sound, where the drum were kept for up to 72 hours. The fish were then examined, studied, and all
Little
effects of
baby
the
guy.
prior hooking event documented.
This would be about the smallest of the size we catch out here. This fish is just mature. It's a male. You can hear him drumming. Was that a deep hook one? That fish swallowed a 16-aught circle hook, which is really rare. We've got better than 90%. We're right at 90% success in hooking the fish in the corner of the mouth when we're using that big circle hook on a slip rig. Of course, a circle hook with a fixed weight, about 5 or 6 inches above the hook, is perfect. But using a slip weight, the 16-aught circle hooks work the best. Better than 90% of the fish are hooked in the corner of the mouth. This was one of the 10%, which deep hooked it. 3 days later, he's doing great.
Proper release of fish requires proper tools on hand. Always have a pair of pliers ready to de-hook the fish. Pliers allow for greater control of the hook during removal. Hook-out devices work well for more hands-free hook removal, especially when the fish is deep hooked. A device called a Boca grip enables you to control smaller fish in the water and eliminates the need for a net. Scales are built into the handle so as to allow for hands-free weighing.
Another device that we have available to the fishermen is a landing net. They come in various sizes, but the newer designs are vinyl coated, knotless webbing as I have here. There are no knots in there. And the knotless webbing helps reduce that sloughing off of the slime, the protected slime on the side of the fish. The landing net also allows you to confine the fish where you can work with him as far as taking the hook out and picking him up and weighing him.
How and where the fish is hooked can be determined by the type bait used. Ideally, for any catch or release fishing, the goal is to lip or mouth hook the fish so as to minimize injury. Natural and live baits are more prone to be swallowed deep into the stomach and throat regions, resulting in greater damage to the fish. Artificial lures tend to be lodged more in the mouth, avoiding any vital organs. These factors should be considered while catch and release fishing.
Bill, we're using 40-pound casts, 6.5-foot rods, TLD reels here. Try to land these drum as quickly as we can. Most of these fish we can put to the boat in 5 minutes. Hardly ever do you have one that takes more than 10 minutes. The heavier gear that you use and the faster you can get the fish in, along with the circle hooks, the better it's going to be.
Try not to use too light a line where you don't have to have long battles to bring this fish to the beach. And if all possible, to even step into the water, release the fish while it's in the water and never bring it out of the water to release, which means a lot. You don't need a small hook. A bigger hook is like that. Whether he's a fish that's 5 pounds or whether he's a fish that's 50 pounds, he's got a big enough mouth that he can take care of a bigger hook, either way you fish.
Water temperature can have a great impact on a fish's survivability. The warmer the water, such as during the summer months, the lower the dissolved oxygen the water contains, and the more difficult it is for the fish to breathe. Extended bite times will overly stress the fish and cause a metabolic waste known as lactic acid to build up in his system. This stress condition could leave the fish susceptible to predation, disease, or even prohibit total recovery. The quicker you bring the fish to the boat using heavier gear, the greater the chance for the fish's survival.
He was ready to go.
Try not to remove the fish from the water. If you must, wet your hands first and be quick and gentle. Do not squeeze the fish. Avoid contact with the boat and never hold the fish near the gills or eyes.
When you get ready to release him, it's not necessarily necessary to move him back and forth in the water. What I recommend is that you cradle him, kind of hold him into the current, and he will start pumping water through his gills, and you can tell when he's ready because he'll take off like a rocket.
If possible, leave a netted fish in the water during hook removal and allow the fish to swim away when ready. It is no wonder as to why the red drum is North Carolina's state fish. Not only is it beautiful and highly prized, but it's played an integral part in North Carolina's proud history. But the people of our state should be proud too. They have worked hard to protect, preserve, and perpetuate our stocks of red drum. Fisheries managers, anglers, and scientists have set an example for the rest of the nation to follow. And with their continued efforts, the future for red drum in North Carolina will keep improving.
Red drum right here in North Carolina, it's a world-class fishery. The fish obtain their largest sizes and live the longest right here in North Carolina. The world record red drum was caught right here off of Avon at 94 pounds, and I think 8 of the 10 line class records were caught in North Carolina and currently are held by fish caught in North Carolina. So I don't really know of anywhere else you can go and catch 40 and 50 pound fish on a regular basis like you can here in North Carolina.
And we believe that our fishery management plan has shown that there is a way that both the commercial and the recreational red drum fishery can coexist and still see that population rebound and ultimately recover.
And that if we keep going in the direction we're going with the rules that are intact now, and being very careful as we are more lenient in the future, that we will see that we're going to have a drum fishery for many, many years to come.